Law enforcement have made new arrests in cold cases recently. This comes as the state Justice Department is pushing for sexual assault kits sitting on shelves across the state to be tested. For more on that, we're joined by State Attorney General Josh Stein. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, so this announcement yesterday, a series of rapes that occurred in 2009 and 10 in the Fayetteville area, and then last week a cold case, murder case from nearly 47 years ago.
In Johnston.
I mean, obviously, these are bad crimes, but these are good news conferences you get to be a part of.
They're incredible. I mean, to me, what it shows is the power of persistence, the power of partnership, and the power of DNA. Because without one of those three, none of these cases get solved. You had Sheriff Bizzle in Johnston County. You had the Fayetteville PD. They would not give up on trying to find those perpetrators, to bring justice for those victims. But they can't do it alone. They need the scientists at the State Crime Lab. And with the DNA technology, as it continues to evolve, it gets better and better. We had a new machine that we put in 2017 that allowed for the same samples in that Johnston County murder, which before we couldn't get enough to get a profile of the person. It has such sensitivity that we're able to come up with enough of a profile that we can then match it to the gentleman who was arrested.
That's amazing. You know, obviously we've done a lot of, we've talked to you a lot about the backlog and whatnot. Is some of this a direct result? I know you've got grants and you're looking for some of the money. Is some of this a direct result of those starting to be moved through finally?
Absolutely. The Fayetteville, when I was in Fayetteville yesterday, the city of Fayetteville, county of Cumberland, there's not a single untested rape kit in their possession. Every kit they've ever gotten, they've now sent out for testing. What a wonderful testament. What a wonderful demonstration to the people of Cumberland County that they want to do everything they can to make their community safer, to find these serial rapists who terrorize the community. And we are seeing more and more jurisdictions, towns and counties, submit their kits for testing. We're working with them to do that, but of course we need the legislature to help fund that. And I do want to applaud the State House and the governor. Both of them have included the $6 million in their budget, and I'm hopeful that the Senate will too.
So there was a huge fight over this a couple of years ago. They're saying, you know, they didn't really give you any money, frankly, and now there's $6 million. What has changed, do you think, with this particular House? Because it's still led by Republicans, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it just took them a little while to see the power of this, of the DNA. But let's not focus on that.
But I don't hear the blame game either, I guess.
I want to solve a problem. And I think the legislators want to solve a problem. It's clear that law enforcement wants to solve a problem. They want to solve these cases. One of the 12 victims who was raped in her home, it was 9 and 10 years ago in Fayetteville, said that she just feels elated, that she now knows that the chances, you know, the case hasn't been adjudicated. He still has to have a trial and a conviction, so I don't want to prejudge it. But just to know that an arrest was made makes her feel like the system is working.
So, $6 million, let's just say the Senate does that as well. Where does that get us? And do we know how many are left now? I know that's a moving target probably.
It is a moving target, and we've actually outsourced over 1,000. We've reviewed over 1,000 of these 15,000 kits that we learned about a year ago that were sitting on shelves of local law enforcement. And what's amazing is when you test these kits, you get results. We've had over 120 hits where when we do the analysis, it comes back to a known individual, which then becomes an incredible investigative lead that goes to local law enforcement that they can pursue. And that's why we've seen a 29-year-old rape in Charlotte, a 31-year-old rape in Winston-Salem, a 30-year-old rape in Fayetteville, separate from the ones that was just announced yesterday. So when you do the testing, you can actually solve crimes.
I have covered this, so I get it. I get why it takes a while to appropriate money. But if I'm at home or if I have a case, it seems so frustrating to me when you see these cases get solved that we're not just putting the money in it and doing it, because there could be rapists and murderers out there free right now.
There are rapists and murderers who are out there free right now. And if we test these kits, we can solve these cases. That's why it is essential. It's an imperative. That's why my office has been championing this for the last 2 years, and that's why I'm really pleased that the legislature seems to be moving in the direction.
Do you think the $6 million would be enough to wipe it out, or is it a step again?
We think it is. We didn't wait for the legislature. Last year, my scientists, my leadership at the State Crime Lab, raised $3 million in grant money. That's how we've started doing the outsourcing over the last year. So with that $3 million in grant money and the $6 million that we hope the legislature will appropriate, we think that will be enough. And If it isn't, in 2 years, I'll come back to the legislature and let them know, look, it did 95% of the job or 92% of the job, and we need to finish it. One thing that folks need to understand is we at the State Crime Lab don't have the capacity to test all these because we have, sadly, there are on average 5 rapes every day, and we have to test those kids. So we can't do both the current cases and the old one. That's why we need the money, is to pay for an outside vendor. But they have capacity limits because other states are doing the same thing we are. So it's not something that we can do overnight, but what we want to do is systematically attack this problem so that we can eliminate the backlog, and then 2, make sure it never develops again.
You mentioned the technology you got, I think, back in 2017. Is that where we are, the best we can do, or could you even use better technology? Is that part of outsourcing? Or?
There's always new technology that comes online. 2 things. One, it costs money, but 2, you also have to let that new science be proved so that the standards group that accredits our lab, they need to be comfortable that it's actually doing good work before we can implement it. And so, yeah, we wish we could put in the latest technology, but we're trying to keep the lab updated and modern.
I'm sure local law enforcement made the phone calls to these folks, but I mean, I just think back to the one from 47 years ago. What that must have been like to receive that phone call that this case was closed. What is it like for these victims and family members when they hear this news after such a long time?
Yeah, the one in Johnston County, it was a young mother, 2 young children, and she was attacked and murdered, and the 2-year-old was with her at the crime scene. So those 2 sons and the woman's sister, they can at least know. I mean, nothing brings her back. Yep. Nothing brings her back. But to know that the perpetrator may be held accountable, I'm sure just makes them feel like, finally.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing an update with us on this. These 2 cases recently kind of piqued my interest on it. Attorney General, good to see you, sir.
Always
appreciate the time.